In the history of the US, who deserves to be called the United States' most decorated soldier? Whose heroism has garnered the most recognition and medals? It's not a question that can be easily answered. We have two contenders, and we will dive into some of their courageous and outright insane combat actions. There is David Hackworth, who amassed an astonishing array of 71 individual combat decorations, including 8 Purple Hearts, 10 Silver Stars, and 2 Distinguished Service Crosses. And Robert L. Howard, who hasn't won as many decorations as Hackworth, but has won 13 different types of individual medals as well as the Medal of Honor. More shockingly, Howard was nominated for 3 Medals of Honor, but was denied being the first ever recipient of 3 Medals of Honor for controversial reasons, and he was only given 1. David Hackworth carved a legacy defined by fearless leadership, tactical brilliance, and relentless determination. Hackworth's military career began when he enlisted in the Merchant Marine during World War II at just 14 years old, lying about his age to serve. But only served for a few months at the tail end of the war. But his zeal for military led him to enlist in the US Army in 1946, soon after the war ended while still underage. During this post-war period, Hackworth served in Italy with the occupation forces, but it was the outbreak of the Korean War in 1950 that launched his rise into prominence. When the Korean conflict erupted, Hackworth, then a sergeant, was eager to put his training into practice. The war provided a crucible in which his leadership abilities were forged. His time in Korea was marked by his willingness to lead from the front, an approach that set him apart from other officers and gained him the respect of his men. Hackworth's battlefield prowess during the Korean War soon became legendary, and this is where he began to gain his numerous medals for valor. He earned his first of his record 10 Silver Stars on 6th of February 1951. Sergeant Hackworth's task force came under heavy small arms and mortar fire. After positioning his men strategically, Hackworth mounted a tank and directed a barrage of effective machine gun fire at the enemy. When his ammunition ran out, he moved to an exposed deck of another tank and continued firing on the enemy positions. Despite being targeted by intense enemy fire, Hackworth persisted until he was severely wounded. He was given a battlefield promotion to the rank of lieutenant, and his command style, characterized by hands-on, no-nonsense attitude, earned him admiration and a fair share of notoriety among his superiors. His actions in combat consistently displayed an unflinching bravery that caught the attention of those around him. He was awarded 3 Purple Hearts and 3 Silver Stars during Korea, and was promoted to captain by the war's end. He was demobilized after the Korean War, but soon re-enlisted for a third time in 1956. He aimed to bring the best out of his soldiers and to revolutionize US military tactics. After the Korean War, Hackworth spent time in various training and leadership positions, refining his military philosophy and advocating for reforms in how soldiers were trained for combat. This relentless focus on improving the army would become a key theme of his career, even as he moved into one of the most contentious wars in American history, Vietnam. In 1965, now Major Hackworth, he was deployed to Vietnam, where he served as an operations officer and battalion commander with the 101st Airborne Division. That November, he established a specialized platoon known as Tiger Force, with the mission to out-guerrilla the guerrillas. This elite unit conducted long-range reconnaissance patrols, enduring significant casualties throughout its mission. Hackworth was awarded 2 Distinguished Service Crosses during his time in Vietnam, the second highest military decoration that can be awarded to a member of the United States Army. Hackworth was awarded his first Distinguished Service Cross during a vicious engagement on 7th of February 1966. His unit was tasked with relieving a friendly rifle company that had been pinned down for 4 hours. Upon arrival, Hackworth advanced alone to scout the area. Disregarding his safety, he crossed an open field under small arms fire, passed over a bridge swept by hostile machine gun fire, and ran through heavy fire to reach the embattled company's position. Crawling to within 20 meters of the insurgents, he completed his reconnaissance and returned to his command post. Advancing through intense fire, he brought his troops to within 40 meters of the enemy position. For 6 hours under heavy fire, he calmly maneuvered his units closer, repeatedly exposing himself to direct fire and inspire his men. When one attacking unit faltered, Hackworth quickly left his position, rallied the troops, and led them into the Viet Cong positions. During the final assault, he again braved heavy fire to direct an airstrike on the enemy. Hackworth's second Distinguished Service Cross was awarded in 1969, during the latest stages of his Vietnam tour. Between 23rd and 24th of March 1969 as battalion commander during an engagement with two Viet Cong battalions. When one of his companies was attacked by a larger force, Hackworth landed his command helicopter amid heavy enemy fire to resupply them with ammunition and evacuate casualties. Staying on the ground, he led a patrol in pursuit of the retreating enemy. He learned their withdrawal plan from a captured soldier and directed his battalion to set up blocking positions. As the battle escalated, he again boarded his helicopter. He flew through intense anti-aircraft fire to adjust artillery and direct troop movements, repeatedly landing to coordinate with ground commanders, lead assaults, and evacuate the wounded. When a scout element was pinned down and suffered casualties, Hackworth left his helicopter, maneuvered through enemy fire, and helped the wounded to safety. After ensuring their evacuation, he directed supporting fire on the enemy until they were defeated and their supplies seized. Despite his numerous decorations and battlefield successes, Hackworth's career took a controversial turn toward the end of his Vietnam tour. By 1971, Hackworth had become increasingly disillusioned with the way the war was being conducted. He openly criticized US military leadership, calling attention to the Army's flawed tactics and lack of clear objectives. His infamous 1971 interview with ABC News, where he questioned US strategy and leadership in Vietnam, led to intense backlash. Facing the prospect of a court-martial, Hackworth retired from the Army shortly after, a decision that was seen as a direct consequence of his outspoken views. By the end of his military career, he was awarded 2 Distinguished Service Crosses, 10 Silver Stars, a Distinguished Flying Cross, 4 Legions of Merit, 8 Bronze Stars, 8 Purple Hearts, and 4 Army Commendation Medals, and 34 Air Medals, as well as a host of unit, campaign, and service medals. Here at The Odd Historian, I love diving deep into history to uncover the amazing stories of individuals. So let's learn together and comment your favourite story of an individual, whether it be an act of heroism or just someone who led a fascinating or unique life. And who knows, I might make it into an episode. Also, if you enjoyed this episode so far, please like and subscribe. Such small actions can be huge for brand new small channels like mine. Now back to the video. Our next candidate for most decorated US soldier not only won 13 different types of individual awards, but was also nominated for the Medal of Honor a record 3 times in a span of 13 months. Although he was only awarded once, he was denied the other times somewhat controversially, as they were actions inside Cambodia and Laos where operations were covert. Robert L. Howard's military career is a stuff of legend, a testament to grit, courage, and resilience in the face of unthinkable danger. Howard enlisted in the US Army in 1956, launching a career that would span over 36 years and placed him among the most highly decorated soldiers in American history. Howard served 5 tours in Vietnam, operating in some of the world's most perilous missions as part of the Elite Special Forces, and in the top secret Military Assistance Command Vietnam Studies and Observations Group. This unit was highly classified, multi-service special operations unit active during the Vietnam War. Established in 1964, it conducted covert operations that included reconnaissance, prisoner retrieval, sabotage, and psychological warfare. Composed of elite personnel from the US Army Special Forces, Navy SEALs, Marine Force Recon, and the CIA, it specialized in deep penetration missions behind enemy lines. Howard's incredible bravery saw him nominated for the Medal of Honor 3 separate times within a 13-month span. The missions that earned him these nominations are the kind of stories that sound like they were lifted straight from a movie. On the 21st of November 1967, while serving as a Special Forces advisor to a joint American and Vietnamese reconnaissance patrol near the Laotian border, the patrol discovered a large rice and ammunition cache surrounded by enemy bunkers. Leading a small team, Howard encountered 4 North Vietnamese soldiers, and he took them out with rifle fire. Soon after, his team was pinned down by machine gun fire. With no regard for his own safety, Howard crawled toward the enemy, took out a sniper, and charged the bunker, neutralizing its occupants with rifle fire. When a second machine gun opened fire, Howard moved his troops to safety and called for an airstrike. Despite the bombing, some enemies survived. Pinned down with a machine gun just inches from his head, Howard threw a grenade directly into the aperture, silencing the gun temporarily. He then retrieved an anti-tank weapon and under heavy fire destroyed the position. His fearless actions allowed the patrol to successfully complete their mission. He earned his first Medal of Honor nomination for his actions on this day, but it was downgraded to a Distinguished Service Cross due to the covert nature of the mission. His second nomination came almost exactly 1 year later. Howard demonstrated extraordinary valor from the 12th to 20th November 1968 during a mission deep in enemy-held territory. As his platoon was being inserted into the area, they immediately came under heavy fire. Howard leaped from the helicopter before it even touched down and began returning fire, providing cover for his men as they dismounted and moved off the landing zone. Spotting 2 enemy soldiers in a nearby wood line, he charged their position and eliminated them. On the night of the 16th, the platoon was attacked by a company-sized force. Despite intense enemy fire, Howard moved among his men, encouraging them and directing their fire, while fully exposing himself to the barrage. His leadership inspired his platoon to repel the attack. 2 days later, while leading the point element, Howard's platoon was ambushed by 2 North Vietnamese companies. He quickly maneuvered his men into a tactical position, trapping the enemy in a deadly crossfire and breaking the ambush. The next day, Howard observed an ambush being set up by an enemy battalion. Despite being wounded in the initial exchange, he exposed himself to enemy fire to suppress the ambushers and allow his platoon to take over. Moving between positions, he administered first aid to the wounded and set up a landing zone for evacuation. As the first helicopter arrived, it was hit by enemy machine gun fire and burst into flames. Despite being wounded a second time, Howard ran 150 meters to the crash site and rescued a trapped pilot from the burning wreckage. After freeing the entire crew, he led them back to safety, providing covering fire along the way. Another helicopter successfully evacuated casualties, but Howard refused to leave, staying with his platoon. The following morning, he spotted 3 enemy soldiers moving towards his unit and immediately took them out before they could pose a threat. Shockingly, this too was downgraded, but this time to a Silver Star. But Howard would not have to wait long for a third nomination, and the action where he would finally be awarded the Medal of Honor. On December 30th, 1968, while serving as a platoon sergeant for an American Vietnamese unit on a mission to rescue a missing American soldier in enemy-controlled territory in Vietnam. Shortly after leaving the helicopter landing zone, the platoon was ambushed by a force estimated to be 2 entire enemy companies. During the initial attack, Howard was wounded and his weapon was destroyed by a grenade explosion. Despite his injuries and being weaponless, Howard immediately noticed his platoon leader was seriously wounded and exposed to enemy fire. Without hesitation, he crawled through intense gunfire to reach the officer. As he administered first aid and began removing the officer's equipment, an enemy bullet struck one of Howard's ammunition pouches, causing multiple magazines to detonate. Momentarily seeking cover from the explosion, he quickly realized the platoon was disorganized from the attack and needed his leadership. Determined to reach his men, Howard began dragging the wounded officer back towards the platoon, all while under heavy enemy fire. Through his indomitable courage, Howard rallied his disorientated platoon, reorganizing them into a solid defense force. Ignoring his own safety, he crawled from position to position, treating the wounded, encouraging his soldiers, and directing their fire against the encircling enemy. For over 3.5 hours, his small force, aided by supporting aircraft, successfully repelled multiple enemy assaults. When rescue helicopters were finally able to land, Howard personally supervised the evacuation, ensuring every one of his men was safely aboard before he left the landing zone. During his several tours in Vietnam, he was wounded 14 times in a 54-month period. He was eventually given an officer's commission and retired a colonel in 1992. Howard didn't fade quietly into the background. He remained a staunch advocate for veterans, worked for the Department of Veteran Affairs, and traveled to Iraq and Afghanistan to support troops on the ground. His incredible career, marked by a staggering 8 Purple Hearts, 4 Bronze Stars, a Distinguished Service Cross, a Silver Star, a Defense Superior Medal, 4 Legions of Merit, and of course, his well-deserved Medal of Honor. So, who do you think deserves the title of Most Decorated U.S. Soldier? David Hackworth or Robert Howard? And do you think Howard deserves to have been the only soldier ever to be awarded 3 Medals of Honor? If you want more stories of heroism, check out this video on the man described as the one-man Air Force. See you next time.